not a YouTuber, just like making videos. And don't go into 2016 thinking you are a slave. I understand that the new year is fake. I understand they changed the new year. It's not supposed to be on January 1st, but during the vernal equinox. But we are living by the Gregorian calendar, so we just gotta make do with whatever. You know what I'm saying? Make do with how they want to calculate our days or whatever. I don't know what to say about that, but and on December 17th, Dr. Voice Watkins published a video entitled "Black People Slavery Ended in 1965." Unless you live in Texas, then slavery ended in 1967. If anybody knows about June umpteenth. But yeah. And this is going to be I actually wanted to do a reply to his video, earlier, but caught up in some flim-flam or whatever, and making videos about something else. And this is going to be a positive response. This ain't going to be, this is not a rebuttal because I agree with him. Matter of fact, I've made videos on the similar subject matter about slavery, about how this concept of modern day slavery that people keep tossing around. And my thing is like this: there's no such thing as modern day slavery. It's just slavery. Because you can say, picking cotton in the on a plantation in Georgia is modern day slavery compared to slavery in Rome. I'm like, it's just slavery. But a lot of people feel like, oh, slavery never ended, and so forth. Now, the closest thing we have towards slavery is the prison industrial complex, where they, lock people up and things of that, the second Jim Crow. But from my observation, I'm like, it's hard for people to feel sorry for black people when it seems like a lot of blacks run to prison. They like it, or things of that nature. If you're out there selling drugs or doing what you're not supposed to, what do you expect? Now you can be crying, be like, oh, why are we getting so much time and those white boys isn't? Well, we live in a system of white supremacy. You're gonna get more time. Now we shouldn't be fighting on, let's, release these guys or try to lessen their sentence. We should be working on how to clean up our neighborhood. But basically, we pretty much want to do what we want, but we want to just be treated like those white boys, but then still confess that we're living in a system of white supremacy. It doesn't work like that. And I know that there's a lot of innocent black men being railroaded in the prison system, but it's almost like, people can't shift through the good guys and who are the bad guys. And I stated this before, a black degenerate is devastating because the white man has made black people toxic, to the point where, like a white degenerate in a white neighborhood, he's not as contagious, as a black thug or whatever, even though he's just about as dangerous, but not as contagious. But still, let's before I stray too much off topic, is this concept of slavery, oh, we're still slaves and things of that nature. And I think people listen to, like Alex Jones talk about Prison Planet and, these real powerful people. But Alex Jones is somebody who also feels there's a war against the white man because of movies like Machete. So we can all come to the conclusion that Alex Jones is a complete nut. But as far as this structure we have set up here about having to work for the very rich and powerful people under their rules and guidelines, and some people feel like, well, if we don't work, then we can't eat, then that's some form of slavery. But that system has always existed. When white people got off rickety boats from Europe, that's what they had to do. As it was written in Frederick Douglass' book, he stated, a black slave has one master, a white slave have a multitude of masters because they have to work for a master to earn a living, but they can opt not to work at all. I'm pretty sure there was a lot of white people that built a fucking log cabin in the wilderness somewhere and just kept to themselves. And that's the thing. And what the driving force behind white people is that people have stated, white people have gotten privilege. That they're, even though they're dirt poor, they're better than black people. And in a lot of ways, a lot of black people have adopted that mentality when it comes to being an American. Even though you're poor, you're American. And, so a lot of black people are secretively patriotic. They may not hold an American flag by their mailbox, but they feel that they have something over an immigrant who, who crawled over the border to this country or got off a boat or something like that. But we have to still go by choice. And I wish I had a time machine to send a lot of black people back and see how bad real slavery was. Not having control over your mind and over your body. As much as we talk about how hellish the conditions are at work, when a lot of people lose their jobs or get laid off, they start crying. And then, you can apply for unemployment, which I have. I worked at a jail for 5 years, and I walked off. I just walked off. Could you imagine a slave just walking off the plantation because he says, hey, I'm done with this. I'm going. I'm walking. That's what I did. I walked off. And I still got unemployment because I had to take it to court. Because, the reason why I walked off is because I had high blood pressure. And I told my superiors, I said, hey, I got to take a break. My blood pressure's, I'm like, this is unsafe for me at this time. And I told my employees that, hey, I just want to take about an hour break. Maybe go to my car and then, come back to work. And it was like, no, you're going to have to stay and work. And, the shit was fucked up. So then, when I walked off my job, when I took them to court because they wanted to deny my unemployment, I came up with, all my doctor's papers and things of that nature. Because I suffered from hypertension, back then. I was getting dizzy. I felt like I was about to pass out. But my employees like, you have to work. We have nobody to cover your post and things of that nature. So, the benefits of living in a first world condition. And then after that, I took hold of my destiny. I said to myself, I'm not going to work a fucking job where I have to go by a schedule and I have to wear a name tag and I have to put myself in those same circumstances. I made that choice. 10 years later, I'm living good. I'm happy. I don't feel like a slave. Now, there are things we have to do, like pay taxes and so forth. But what I'm trying to get at is what Dr. Voice Watkins is trying to say, that you have a choice. But some people feel like, oh no, there's no choice, it's a complete dead end. If I have to work and gather up money, then I have to work towards my freedom, and that's the same thing a slave has to do. No, a lot of these guys simply use excuses. You know what I mean? They enjoy their life, being nothing. And there's no problem with that. If you don't want to work, if you just want to be a slouch, or you want to be like Danny Swello, whatever the hell his name is, completely remove yourself from the monetary system and go live in a cave somewhere in Utah, you have that option. You don't have to work. You can collect cans for a living. That's what people don't, I guess they cannot fathom that. They simply said, well, if I want all this nice stuff, then I'm going to have to be a slave. I'm going to have to work for somebody and go by their rules and so forth and deal with, irritating employees. No, you don't. You can be the person in power. And then when we talk about black-owned businesses, getting away from the white man's plantation, if you run your own business, you may have employees. And them employees are going to be under your tutelage, and we're working for you. And your own employees can be calling you a slave driver. So, man, I'm a slave. I got to work for this boss, man. He wants me to be at work at 4 o'clock in the morning and, got me working 12-hour shifts, man. I'm like, man, no freedom. Slavery never ended. Now I'm gonna go into Frederick Douglass' magnificent autobiography. When Frederick Douglass escaped from chattel, real slavery, you know what he did? The first thing he did was get him a job. And he was happy that he can go into work on his own reconnaissance. That when he got his pay, or whatnot, he was happy. He kept it to himself. The first he got married, got him a job, and then wrote books and wrote newsletters and started his whole abolitionist career. To the point where he was making money doing that, to the point where he didn't have to work, for scrump change. So I take inspirations from that. I'm like, you got people here that are, you know what I'm saying? They can just work in the job as slavery. But look what Frederick Douglass had to go through, and then look how he built his empire, became rich. That's the thing. Now, you know what I'm saying? We got white supremacy. I understand that. But slaves back in those days, they protested. They did whatever. They had, you had Nat Turner. You had people running away from the plantation. But it seems like people here are just satisfied with the plantation, but want to gripe and complain, for nothing. You know what I'm saying? Without taking their own destiny in their own hand. And I'm gonna leave it at this: that we have actual real slaves running about. We're talking about undocumented workers, people trapped in sex slaves in this country. People that are kept up in some attic, some basement somewhere, that have no power over their life, cannot come and go as they please. People from foreign countries, maybe some people even born in this country, that are really true slaves. I can understand that it's illegal, and it's technically illegal in this form of 9-to-5 slavery is not legal, but you got to get where I'm coming from. You know what I mean? You have the power to end your own slavery. You know what I mean? Because you're not going to end white supremacy anytime soon. You can't expect these slave masters, which we say, we're still slaves, to say, hey man, let's free people. So I'm like, what do you expect? What do you expect to happen? Shit, just be free? That you can just sit inside your house and get everything for free? It doesn't work like that. Not in a modernized society. If you want to just build you a tree house and live in those conditions, fine, knock yourself out. But we got, real slaves, undocumented workers living in people's basement. But that's all I want to say. Thanks for watching, and sally forth. What the hell? What happened to my undocumented workers I had trapped down here? What the
fuck? They fucking got away again, huh?